Anyway, look, I'm not really coming at it from the same angle as other people, but I kind of wanted to make a film that treated fictions as if they were facts. That was the kind of idea about making a film about communist jokes, which was that, the facts were quite confusing and people had lots of different opinions and they were, no one quite knew which way to interpret them, but maybe the jokes said something more true about people's lives than the historical facts. So I sort of collected as many jokes as I could, and I strung them out in a long line. So I had a sort of chronology of jokes, and you could date them. And I sort of looked at them and tried to see what they said about the different phases that communism went through. And you've got a basic chronology. You've got the terror jokes in the 30s, and you've got lots of jokes about Qs in the 60s, and you've got a lot of jokes about Brezhnev in the 70s. It wasn't really good enough to make even a half-decent documentary out of. So then I had to look at sort of who told the jokes. I had to kind of look at phenomenologically at the whole context of the jokes, yeah. So it was like, I started noticing that as things moved on, the joke in Poland, there was one comedian who managed to tell a few jokes on TV, and then I found some evidence that Gorbachev told some jokes in the 80s. And I thought, this is like could be a really good kind of joke analysis, a narrative, if I kind of demonstrate that, communism was brought down by jokes. So it started off with jokes, and then that was kind of okay because I could have a joke narrative, a joke analysis in the film. And then there was another problem with the jokes, is they weren't quite enough. These fictions weren't quite enough by themselves. I found that because I was making a documentary, I had to tell stories about the stories. So I moved quite quickly towards trying to interview people who told the jokes, or who arrested people for telling the jokes, or in some way were connected to the jokes, to whom things had happened. So that was another layer of the film. So it was a fictional documentary because it was a story about fictions, and it was also a story about what happened to people who told those stories. I suppose in parentheses, I also faced the problem of how to translate jokes onto TV, which was kind of different from, telling them. Luckily, I spotted that it wouldn't be very good if the film was just full of a couple of blokes in front of a blue screen saying, "Did you hear about?" What was a really good? My favourite Romanian one was, "What's colder?" It comes from the 80s. "What's colder in winter in Romania than the cold water?" And the answer is the hot water. And it's really kind of epigrammatic. But anyway, I sort of ended up reconstructing a lot of the jokes, usually rather badly, as sketches, and I used some fake archive. So there was a few nods to the archive documentary and some sketches that were meant to be nods in the direction of bad 70s sketch shows. And then there were some quite expensive animations that we got done in Canada, thanks to some funding. So there was all this kind of process then of translating these jokes into another kind of documentary fiction, I guess. And I wanted to finish up this sort of overlong speech by talking about how I failed, actually. Because the film had, many flaws in it, and I'm sure most people turned off after an hour. Apart from the sketches being quite badly filmed and directed most of the time, which is kind of embarrassing, the main flaw that I had was actually that I thought I could just kind of sketch this line through history, decade by decade, inside the Soviet Union, and including politicians, and like these really, like some of the best ones, like that they told about queues, like, will there be? I hear there'll be snow tomorrow. Well, I'm not queuing for that. These were sort of told by party officials to try and make light about the economic problems and challenges that communism posed to them for 70 years. So there you go. I made a sort of fictional film, fictional documentary that turned out not to be true.
Boom, boom.
Yeah.